To the next presentation after an excellent presentation by Ms. Neha. It is on BMI, body composition, visceral factor, visceral fat, and other markers to evaluate management of obesity. May I invite Dr. Poonam Shah for this presentation? And you can have her slide. She's a bariatric physician. She's working in bariatric clinic for last over 18 years. So she has been a committee member for the International Federation for Surgery of Obesity in defining guidelines for post-bariatric care, the life member of API and many other almost all obesity-related organizations, and a physician practicing mainly as a bariatric physician, and she takes part in conducting all the certificate courses for this. So I will, can you just permit to share the screen so that I can invite Dr. Poonam Shah here. Can you see the slides?
Yes, sir, we can.
Yes. Let me hand over to Dr. Poonam.
So good morning, everybody, and thanks to Sinsan and Mr. Dabir for this wonderful opportunity to share our clinical experience of so many years. And Mr. Dabir has always been a very positive influence in our obesity practice. He's always been very encouraging about us taking such sort of training programs and webinars. Thank you. And my topic is BMI, body composition, visceral fat, and other markers which are helped to evaluate the management options for obesity. So obesity measurement is in various ways by use of the body mass index, waist to hip ratio, skin fold thickness, biometric impedance, the ultrasound, DEXA, CT MRI, air displacement plethysmography, total body electrical conductivity, hydrometry, and measurement of body fat percentage in Asian settings. Now, many of these are mainly for in the research environment, and so we do not need all of these in our clinical practice, even though they may be more accurate in measuring the amount of obesity. So we start with usually measuring the weight and height of the patient, and we calculate the body mass index. So it is a crude population measure of obesity, and where the patient's weight in kilograms is divided by the square of his or her height in meters. So why is this important? Because as we see, as the body mass index goes on increasing, the mortality risk also goes on increasing. So this is a graphic representation of that. And also there is a relationship between the BMI and the relative risk of appearance of these comorbid conditions. So if you see, the horizontal bar represents the BMI and the vertical bar the relative risk. So the appearance of various comorbid conditions like diabetes, hypertension, cholelithiasis, coronary heart disease, it is seen that they appear as the BMI starts increasing slowly. So that is why the BMI is, of course, important. However, it measures the patient's total weight relative to his or her height. So somebody short will have a higher BMI, somebody tall will, the BMI may be seen as low. Again, if the person is very muscular, as in athletes, the BMI may be very high. So you cannot just operate a person on the BMI. Again, similar BMIs, women have a greater fat mass than their male counterparts. So just BMI is not enough. So according to the BMI, the WHO has this classification, which Madam has already discussed, where underweight is a BMI less than 18.5, overweight is 25 to 29.9, and then obese grade 1 to 3, where the BMI of more than 40 is morbidly obese. But and this is the graphical presentation where you see that as the BMI goes on increasing, the degrees of obesity goes on increasing, and as the degree increases, the comorbid conditions also increase. But this cannot be applied to our Indian scenario or to the Asian scenario because of the Indian paradox or the Asian Indian phenotype. This is a very famous photograph you must have seen in all of the obesity conferences, where you have Dr. Yajnik and his friend from UK. If we see their BMI is same, but when the DEXA was done, the amount of body fat in Dr. Yajnik's was 21.2 versus 9.1 in his friend. So he says that the contribution of genes to such adiposity is yet to be determined, although the possible relevance of intrauterine undernutrition is supported by the first author's low birth weight. And this image is a useful reminder of the limitations of BMI as a measure of adiposity across population. So as Madam said in her presentation, the Asian Indians have an increased genetic susceptibility to deposit visceral fat, which is metabolically active and strongly related to insulin resistance. So the same thing is applied even in the NCP's ATP guidelines, where which is used for the treatment of high blood cholesterol in adults, and they also make use of some clinical and laboratory parameters like the waist circumference, triglycerides, HDL, BP, and fasting blood sugar to determine the type of treatment to be given to the patients. This is another study where they have studied the association of the BMI and the waist-hip ratio to the incidence of acute myocardial infarction, and they have also seen that abdominal obesity is a greater risk factor than the BMI, indicating that the measurement of waist to hip ratio should replace BMI as an indicator of obesity. So the measurement of waist to hip ratio is very important. Another study from Canada where they studied the BMI equivalent for diabetes risk in South Asians compared to other populations in Canada. If you see, the white bar is the white population, the red bar is the South Asians, then you have the Chinese, and then the blacks, which is the orange bar. So if we see for the South Asians, a BMI is 24 is also enough for them to develop diabetes. So the BMI equivalent in South Asians is much low. So the guidelines have been changed. So because we have more fat and less muscle mass, the BMI cutoffs are lower, as ma'am said. So 23 to 24.9 BMI is said to be overweight, and anyone more than 25 of BMI is said to be obese. And accordingly, the guidelines for surgical treatment have also been changed. So this is importance of measuring the waist-hip ratio, the apple shape and the pear shape. Very easy to, when we're talking to the patient and we present such pictorial things, patients understand this better. So in men, the waist to height ratio is more than 1, and in women, it is usually less than 1. And in men, the obesity is above the waist. In female, it is below the waist. And of these, the apple or the central abdominal obesity is clinically more important as it is more correlated, and diseases are more correlated with this abdominal fat, as well as on the other hand, the gynoid obesity is characterized by accumulation of fat around hip and buttocks, and there is less incidence of metabolic syndromes in these cases. So we know that it is very easy to measure the waist-hip ratio with the help of a simple tape. Again, there is a different guideline for Asians. It is 90 centimeter in men and 80 centimeter in women. Very easy to remember, and it is more in the European counterparts. So when we talk of CT and MRI, actually it is very they're very useful to differentiate between the subcutaneous and visceral fat. But we use this mainly for research purposes. Now, why is this important? If you see the side view, we have the subcutaneous fat, which is below the skin, and we have the visceral fat, which is inside the abdomen, inside the abdominal muscles. So this is how it would look on a sagittal section, where you have the standard type in between. Then you have the visceral fat, where the fat is among the organs inside, and you have the subcutaneous fat, this is very easy to explain to the patient. So here we make use of DEXA, which is a dual energy X-ray absorptiometry. Actually, it is used for mainly for studying the bone mineral density, but it is also useful for studying the body fat percentage, because in it's like a colored X-ray, and it gives the body fat percentage, the total fat mass, the visceral fat, the total lean mass, and it is like if you see this picture, the yellow part is the fat, the red part is the muscles, and the blue part is the bone. So it is a very pictorial and a very useful parameter to be used, especially in our low BMI diabetics, when we want to know how much is the body fat compared to the BMI of that patient. So this is again, we use it for certain patients. So here also another study which shows that as the visceral fat area goes on increasing, the incidence of various comorbidities like high blood pressure, hyperglycemia, high triglycerides, low HDL cholesterol, all these clustering of these metabolic risk factors, they all go on increasing. So this is again an important reference to remember. So there are various charts which are available, which we can show to our patients. We show that the visceral fat normal is healthy is up to 1 to 12%, and anything more than that will be excessive. Again, the body fat percent in men normal is 10 to 19.9, high is 20 to say 24.5. So anything more than 25% is high. Similarly, in women, anything more than 35% is high. So there are colorful charts which we can show to our patient. I'm sorry about this, it is not very clear. And again, there is another classification where you have, so to explain to the patient, well, essential fat is 10 to 12% in females, 2 to 4 in males for athletes, because they always want to ask you this question. So, okay, for athlete females, 14 to 20 is okay, males 6 to 13 is okay. So these are various references which are available when we want to talk to the patient. Another important engine that we use in some patients is the UPPDS risk engine, where, for example, this case where we had a male, 38 years of age, he was diabetic for 2 years. He had a waist circumference of 102 centimeters, a BMI of 31. Now his metabolic parameters showed a triglyceride of 766, cholesterol 270, HDL low of 23, HbA1c was 12.7, C-peptide was 2.8, and he was on high dose of insulin as well as OHAs. He was on atorvastatin and aspirin. His elder brother had acute myocardial infarction at the age of 42. So naturally, this person was very worried about his health, but his BMI was 31. So if we put these parameters into the UPPS engine, where you have the age, the HbA1c, diabetes duration, systolic BP, the sex of the patient, the total cholesterol, presence or absence of atrial fibrillation, HDL cholesterol, the ethnicity. What is more important here is the ethnicity is taken into consideration, whether the person is a smoker or non-smoker. And then when we put all these parameters in this UPPDS search engine, we found that the 10-year risk of a coronary heart disease for this patient was 33.2. You can see that it is in the red zone. So that is high risk. Even for a fatal cardiovascular event, it was 16.9. So we operated this patient. He underwent bariatric surgery, and within 3 months, his waist was down to 90, BMI to 28, the triglycerides and other parameters were low. We put that in this engine, and you can see that we have decreased his 10-year risk from 33 to 5.7. So this is a very useful engine when you have these lower BMIs, diabetic patients coming to you and asking you for helping. Another important thing is the Edmonton Obesity Staging System, called as EOSS. It is designed by Dr. Arya Sharma and his team from Edmonton, Canada. It is a 5-stage system of obesity classification, which considers the metabolic, physical, as well as the psychological parameters in order to determine the optimal obesity treatment. So it has been reported to be a better predictor of mortality than the BMI or the metabolic syndrome only. So it is very beautifully presented in an arch shape, where if you follow it from left to right, stage 0, 1 up to 5, and then you have, so you have the inner arch, which shows the functional status of the patient, where there is any functional disability. The middle is the mental problems that the patient may be suffering because of the obesity. And the last one is the medical problems. So you have stage 0, where all this is absent, stage 1, where there are preclinical risk factors. Then in stage, the next stage 2, you have comorbidities have appeared and there is moderate mental and functional disability. Stage 3 and 4, we have the end organ damage of the various systems, as well as severe mental and functional disability. So the treatment is based on this classification. For example, so for stage 0 and stage 1, lifestyle intervention, prevention, counseling, regular medical control is recommended. For stage 2, you have lifestyle interventions, and we may consider metabolic surgeries. Again, here then we will take into account the other factors that we just discussed. Stage 3 and 4, where there is significant end organ damage with other psychological complaints and functional disabilities and limitations, then we suggest lifestyle intervention with metabolic surgery to this patient. So this is a very useful thing again. So a measurement of obesity, clinical application, for the consensus statement which was passed for Asian Indians in 2009 is normal BMI 18 to 22.9, overweight 23 to 24.9, and obesity anybody who is more than 25 kgs. So after the BMI, we have to look into various body fat percentage and the comorbid conditions which are there, again the psychological problems, the physical limitations. If we see all this, then we can treat our patients better. Thank you.